ride or with the park and the premise, that you would want to notify them to eliminate any further injuries to people.
Well, there's a difference between notifying them quickly and eliminating your ability to recover damages if you're injured by failure to notify quickly. We would agree that an early notification is in the interest of everyone, but to extinguish somebody's claim because they failed to notify within 36 hours, we think is a little harsh.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Are there other questions from the committee? This witness, Representative Houghton. Proceed.
Would you have a problem if they slid in there something like 48 hours or 2 working days or something like that?
I don't know. That I'd have to take back. That 30 days was sort of what I was authorized to propose. So I can't really say that without running it back by somebody else.
Representative Cracky. Sure.
As far as notification, I kind of agree that it should be a little bit lengthened, only because if you're in amusement park, you have children, they're out wandering, sometimes they've fallen and you don't know, and something might come up a little bit later. So maybe an agreement that it maybe should be a little bit longer than 36 hours. What that is, I don't know. That you know, when you have a group of kids that you're supervising, or if you even only have 3 of your kids with you, it's a little hard to keep an eye on them all the time in case and you're not aware of it, and they might get sore a little bit later on.
Well,
That's my concern.
If you had a school group and say you were the chaperone and it wasn't your child, but it was another child that was injured, then
Right.
you know, that leads a whole nother series of problems before the parents are notified.
Right, and I don't know what that heavy medium is, but I just think, you know, what it's in there right now is a little bit short of time. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Representative Anders. Proceed.
This only pertains though to the defect that's on the property. I mean, if you run into a tree or something, you're not watching where you're going, that doesn't count in this situation, does it? It has to be a defect or a defect that you have to be notified. Thank you.
Are there other questions for this witness from the committee? Seeing none, thank you, ma'am, for your testimony.
Thank you. And then again, we appreciate the ability or the willingness of the representative to work with us, and we'll continue to do that.
Okay, thanks. Are there others here that are opposed to this bill? Seeing none, anyone here would like to testify for informational purposes only? Seeing none, Representative Austin, almost called you another name. You don't want to know what it is because it would have been very insulting. So, Representative Austin, any closing remarks?
I don't, other than I have no problem with the 2 working days, and I'll continue to work with Matt if we can find that happy medium. 2 working days, I think, is a great suggestion.
Okay,
Thank you.
That concludes our hearing on House Bill 1929. We'll now move to House Concurrent Resolution 38. Turn it over to the Vice Chair.
In the interest of time, proceed whenever you're ready, Mr. Chair.
I think I relinquished that when I came down here, but I appreciate that.
I'm Don Phillips, State Representative for District 138, and bringing you today House Concurrent Resolution 38. This resolution deals with EPA. You know, we've heard a lot of testimony on DNR-related bills, and this committee is certainly concerned about our environment, especially our water quality, our wastewater, you know, our atmosphere, all that stuff. But the thing is, it seems to me as though the EPA is becoming unreasonable. This resolution simply asks in 3 different areas for the Congress to pull back the reins of the EPA in the areas of water quality, wood burning, and also on coal-fired power plants. Those seem to be the areas that they most heavily target. And so that's basically it in a nutshell. Now, I will tell you that on the, I did include a little statement in here on the second page, next to the last paragraph, where it says, whereas each state has different resources and needs and should be permitted the maximum flexibility and discretion in implementing policies and, excuse me, and regulations regarding its natural resources. To me, we have a perfectly able Department of Natural Resources if some of the strings, some of the attachments are loosened up a little bit. I think in this day and age, across our country, that's probably the case. EPA's been at it long enough now that rather than continue to over-regulate, it might, in my opinion, it'd be a good time to back off a little bit and say, okay, let's review each one of these states, and there's going to be some that are getting the job done, some that aren't, and allow those that are getting it done to proceed. In the very last paragraph on page 3, there is a language error there. It went right over the top of my head, even though I read it. I thought, that's an odd bunch to notify. It should say that there will be a copy of this presented to the leaders of the Senate and the House of Representatives, the Commissioner of the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, not the Food and Drug Administration. So we'll make that change before, with an amendment before it's ever brought up in executive session.
Questions for the sponsor? Representative Runway.
Just a comment.
Proceed.
I want to thank you, Chairman, for bringing this up. It's a very important thing that we really need to get done and send a message because it is crucial for our state. I appreciate you bringing this up. I'll be definitely in favor of it. Thanks.
Any other questions for the representative? Okay, those wishing to testify in favor of?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm David Clint, and I work for the Missouri Electric Cooperatives, and we are here in support of HCR 38. All of the resolution, as a matter of fact, but in particular, the part about the coal plants. As most of you know, the EPA, the President told the EPA that they need to put forth rules to control carbon out of coal-fired power plants. 2 rules are expected. One rule has already been submitted. It is now currently in the comment period. EPA just extended that rule by 60 days for the comment period, and that's the one for new coal-fired power plants. The effect of that rule is there will not be another coal plant built because it requires carbon sequestration. There isn't even a technology available for carbon sequestration. If there was available, it would raise the cost coming out of that new coal plant by 80%. Well, obviously, no one's going to build a coal plant if it was 80% higher price. So that virtually says no more coal plants would be built. The second rule is the one we're probably the most concerned about. We're concerned about the first rule, but on the second rule is for the existing coal plants. Within that rule, we're not exactly sure what it's going to be. We think we know what it's going to be, but it's going to be to put a cap on the amount of carbon that can come out of those plants. What the effect of that's going to be, you will not be able to run those plants at capacity. At what level we have to cut back, we're not sure at what that level will be. But anyway, the effect is if you can't run the coal plant at capacity, you have to use other means of supplying electricity, which is more expensive. Because next to hydro, producing electricity from coal-fired power plants is the cheapest form of electricity you have. So if you have to substitute other power, whether it be natural gas, whether it be wind, whether it would be solar, it's going to be more expensive, which is going to drive the cost up. You know, one of the things that has concerned us greatly is that with the electric cooperatives, as you all know, we're nonprofit. We serve our member owners. And when we look at who our member owners are, they have an average income, it's just between $25,000 and $50,000 a year. 40% of that population reports a gross income of less than $50,000. 16% of these make less than $25,000 annually. And an estimated 80% of our members are age 45 or older. 41% have been members for more than 25 years. 47% is employed. 37% is either retired or on a pension. And 35% of our members are 65 or older, and most of those are retired. So yeah, I think you can see what the effect of increased costs on the electricity is going to be. You know, the president come out and he actually said we need to use an all-the-above energy strategy. The problem is we have all the above except one energy strategy right now. The electric cooperatives in Missouri have spent over $1.1 billion in the last decade to be able to produce some of the cleanest power coming out of coal plants that exist. For us to come back and continue to operate these plants under what we expect the new regulations could be, we could have to spend well over another $1 billion on these plants. Most of these plants was built in the 70s and 80s. They're getting close to their useful life. And what we have is, do you have a decision here? If very strict requirements are required on these coal plants, we're better off to stop them. Our only choice would be natural gas. I think we all had some concerns about that because of two reasons. We know how volatile the price is of natural gas. A lot of the people in this state heat their homes with natural gas. If most of the generation of electricity is from natural gas, if you have a huge increase in natural gas, I think that you see that the effect on that homeowner, because they get a double whammy on their utility and their heating bill. So we're very concerned about these. Another thing to take in mind, and I think we all know that diversification is very important. You know, we think it's good to have gas. We have wind. We have 600 megawatts of wind. Hopefully within the next year we'll have another 150. We'll be at 750 megawatts of wind. We have about 2,500 megawatts of coal-fired power plant. We actually have 2,600 megawatts of natural gas capacity, 478 megawatts of hydro gas capacity. So that you see we have very diversified. And even though the coal and the natural gas is very close to our capacity at the same amount, we still produce about 80% of our electricity with coal. So I think you see the effects on Missourians with this. You know, we've had some questions before in the past, well, why in the world did everybody build so many coal plants? Well, I think you go back to 1978 when Congress passed a bill that was called the Power Plant and Industrial Fuel Act of 1978, and it basically said you can't build any electricity plants, you can't build any power plants that uses natural gas. You can't build any big industrial sites that use natural gas. Now, within 3 years, they figured out that was a pretty stupid law we passed, and they repealed it. But there was that period of time in there that you couldn't build natural gas plants, and if you remember 3 Mile Island, you couldn't build nuclear either. The only choice you had was to build coal plants through those periods of time. So that's why we do that. We are working, we burn Wyoming coal. We converted several years ago at our Thomas Hill plant up around Moberly. We used to have our own coal mine there, do our own coal mining and burn that coal, but it was high sulfur coal at the time. And because of the new rules coming out, we had to close the coal mine and start bringing in low sulfur coal. And we pay a premium for the lowest sulfur coal that we can buy to burn in our power plants in Missouri. So that's why we're in favor of this rule. We think it's very good. And Representative, thank you for bringing this forward.
Any questions for this witness? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any others testify in favor of it? let's keep it short and sweet, folks, please. We've got a few more bills, 3 more bills to hear, and we've got exec yet.
With that direction, Mr. Chairman, my name is David Overfeld. I'm a registered lobbyist for Associated Industries of Missouri, and we want to go on record for HCR 38 in its entirety.
Well, that was short and sweet. Any to question this witness? Thank you, sir. Any others wishing to testify in favor of? Those in opposition to?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Lynn Schlosser, registered lobbyist for Missouri Environmental Defense Alliance for 2
Any questions? Representative Ross has a question for you.
Good morning.
Morning.
I was just curious, you said they were, environmental defense was opposed. What exactly is it in the gentleman's resolution they opposed?
I will actually get back to you on that.
Fantastic, thank you.
Representative Scholl has a question.
To inquire, we need to get her name here so that we can understand this.
All right, next gentleman.
Hello, my name is John Hickey. I'm with the Missouri Sierra Club. We are opposed to HCR 38. According to the American Cancer Society, air pollution from coal-fired plants kills over 500 Missourians every single year. To put that in context, that's the entire State House of Representatives times 3. That's a lot of people, and it's critical for our state to stop killing 500 people a year from air pollution from coal plants. And that is why we're opposed to that. We can do better in this state. We're very excited about the amount of wind power that the co-ops are buying. I'm a member of the Crawford County Electric Co-op myself, so I use electricity from the co-ops. And the co-ops have been a leader in switching to wind. Today, buying new wind is much cheaper than buying new coal. And I agree with the sponsor that or with Mr. Clint from the electric co-ops, that the plants that were built in the 60s and 70s are at the end of their useful life. So this is a great opportunity to switch to a cleaner energy that uses energy from Missouri instead of energy from Wyoming. Thank you.
Representative Black.
Could you provide the committee with documentation of the information that you just presented about the amount of fatalities that occur from coal-fired
Sure.
plants? Okay, thank you. Yes, appreciate it.
Representative Miller.
To inquire. Thank you. Wind power. Sir? Yeah. Do they have an exemption on, for wind power for killing American bald eagles? Do they get an exemption from the federal government for that?
I am not an expert on that. My understanding is that there is that when wind farms are placed, that they get some number of allowable fatalities for birds. And
For American bald eagles?
Whether it's how many different species are demarcated on that, I'm not sure.
It's a federal law that you can't kill American bald eagles.
That's great. It's a national bird.
Okay, and they got an exemption?
I'm not posing as an expert on American bald eagles today.
Thank you.
Representative Love.
To inquire, please. I have a question. About how many members do you have? You represent the Sierra Club of Missouri, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
About how many members?
We have about 10,000 members in the state of Missouri, including...
Pretty good number.
Yeah.
Let's just say if for some reason the coal companies decided to just shut their plants off, not going to use it, zilch, how many days do you think it would be before you and your other almost 10,000 members would want to turn it back on?
Well, I don't know that, well, I know the Sierra Club is not recommending that we turn off all the coal plants tomorrow. We think that there is a better way to do it, to plan ahead and recognize that some of these, some of these plants were built in the 1950s with a planned life of 40 years. And my math tells me that it's been more than 40 years since 1955, and that now is the time to.
So are they allowed to build new ones?
It would be foolhardy to build a new coal plant today because you can get wind for much cheaper than you can get coal. So, because utilities have to choose the least cost resource, and coal is not their least cost resource.
I heard the previous testimony there that they've already spent $1.1 billion to improve. My relatives work in these power plants, they're Boilermakers. And they're getting about as clean as you can get. Is there a level on the wall that someday they'll get clean enough to satisfy you and your other 10,000 members? I mean, do you have a goal in mind that, hey, when you reach this, you're okay, leave us alone? Is there a level?
Well, the coal industry says that it can build a carbon sequestration technology, and I'm waiting to see what they do.
Is it affordable? Did you hear the numbers of people that was mentioned about rely on electricity that don't have an earnings of over $30,000 a year? How are these people going to, what are they going to use when it's zero at night?
Today, it is cheaper for a utility to get new generation from wind than from coal, so those low-income customers are depending on this transition. That is why the co-ops have bought 750 megawatts of wind, not because it's more expensive, because I think their pencil pushers, I'm sure, are quite smart. They did it because it's cheaper. That is the future.
That's all.
I do have a question right quick, and I would like for you to provide information to everybody on the committee that shows that wind energy is cheaper than coal. Because I've never seen that. So, thank you. Representative Schultz.
To inquire. Do you know if there is any information or data available regarding the number of deaths caused by jet air engine burning fossil fuels?
Not that I'm aware of. I've never heard that
Or
issue.
volcanoes?
I'm not aware of any volcanoes in the United States that have killed anybody since Mount St. Helens, which was a number of years ago. I don't think there's I would imagine in the last 10 years the count would be zero of dead people from volcanoes in the United States.
Well, maybe not within the last 10 years, but I know some were killed, I believe, the state of Washington. in the 80s.
Well, if utilities were building volcanoes, we would be opposed to that.
More opposed.
We're opposed to building volcanoes in the United States.
Representative Grimley.
To inquire, how can you become a member of the Sierra Club?
You pay an annual membership dues, and you can do that online at www.sierraclub.org. Love to have you.
I doubt that's going to happen.
You were asking, so I was.
Yeah. One of the problems I have with your group in particular is that since I came down here, they have came numerous times to my office. And I want to thank them for telling the truth of who they were this last time, because they've imposed themselves to something else to come to my office. I never turned them down for the meeting. But they came up and told me that the Thomas Hill Energy Center that is in our district, and your group was down there. You actually came in after they came. You said that we had mountains of fly ash at the Thomas Hill Energy Center, which was a lie. They haven't for years. I'll tell you, they recycle about all of it. You said we had no settlement ponds where the water would run in. That's another lie. You said it was not monitored, which was another lie. You said that this water was running off into the ditches, into our drinking water, it had arsenic in it, which was another lie, because it doesn't do that. So I could go on here, there's other mistruths that you all misrepresented themselves, and I tell you what, it's appalling to me to see your group come down here. How can we believe about anything what you're saying when you have lied to me numerous, not just you personally, but many of your group come down here and continually put out things that are not true. And then you come in here and say, 500 people and die every year. I don't know how that you can prove a lot of stuff that you're saying. And you know what? Your group has never been held accountable for what you say. And that's what is just really just upsetting me. And if you had shut down the power plant at Thomasville, you would raise prices for a lot of low-income families by 75%. Now that's a fact. That's a study. And everything I tell you, I can back up. And I'll just tell you, they came down here just last week and said that the monitoring of water was not, and they monitor the water. You said the Springfield plant doesn't either, and I know that they monitor that in Springfield because I've had taken the tour of the Springfield plant, and they told me they checked them. They have monitoring tools that they do monitor that. So I'm just telling you, yeah. Well, I did have a question. There's three, I read an article just here the other day. Do you agree with the top environmentalists that we need to build 300,000 windmills each year to 2020 to do away with all coal-fired plants? 300,000 a year.
I've not done national utility planning. I can't speak to that question. I'm not sure what.
That was in Mother Earth magazine just recently.
I don't subscribe, so I didn't see it. I'm sorry.
300,000 a year is what the environmentalists, the top environmentalists said. And I just want to know if you agree with putting out 300,000 windmills a year so we can replace the coal-fired plants.
I'd have to do more research. I've not done research on the national electrical system and what would need to be done. But you made the point that there's groundwater monitoring at the Springfield coal plant. I've got a letter from the DNR here dated July 25th of this year that said there is no monitoring and that city utilities was late on producing a groundwater monitoring plan. There has not been groundwater monitoring at the John Twitty plant since 1985, and I'm glad to share a copy of the letter from the DNR if you think that that is not an accurate statement.
Okay, well, the Thomasville Energy Center, what your group told me, it wasn't monitored, and I know it is. Okay, that's where I'm going.
All right, Representative Cook. Briefly. To inquire briefly. Please. You said 500 people a year approximately die from coal.
I didn't say that. The American Cancer Society.
Oh, okay. Do you have any figures for how many people in Missouri die from the pollution that's being generated in China and third world countries that make its way over here to the United States? Because I understand it's much higher sulfur and pollution than what our power plants are, and it's the same atmosphere.
Right, especially in California and the West Coast where you're closer to the Chinese air. There's a lot of air pollution from China that's blowing into the United States, and that's another problem that needs to be addressed.
Or how much people, the pollution that comes out of Washington, D.C., you know.
I don't think that's as fatal as small particle pollution in the lungs, actually.
Thank you. All right, Representative Otto.
Real quick, Mr. Inquiry.
Yes.
I was going to suggest you give Representative Rumley a complimentary
Membership?
but I don't know that you can do it. Could you, since the ash ponds were brought up real quick, could you just give us a quick rundown on EPA regulations, what's going on with them? I know there's one in St. Charles County that's fairly close to me. I think the one in Labadie, I think, already discussed. Just real quickly.
Well, the next
Greg, hold on, hold on. I think the next bill is kind of dealing with that, Representative Otto.
Oh, okay.
So maybe we can get into it on that one, okay?
Thank you.
All right, Representative Ross.
To inquire briefly. Good morning. Thanks for making the trip. You said you're from Crawford County?
I'm a Crawford County Electric customer.
Okay. Just out of curiosity,